Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought we would cover the stuff that I missed on the dev server, because it looked like Gaijin basically updated it right at the end, and I was busy. So let's do a video going over everything that we ended up seeing. So basically this is just a collection of things which I haven't covered in other videos, just to keep you up to date with what has been going on. As always, if you like the videos, make sure to subscribe and also like the channel. And, wait, that's not right. Wow, I'm all over the place today. But anyway, people have been asking me when do I think the update's going to come out. If it isn't next week, it would be very surprising. So let's hope for like Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, maybe Thursday, and then we can all have a bit of fun. So let's have a look at the vehicles that were added, and then also let's have a look at the changes. The vehicle that was added to Germany was the C3604. You may remember that this was actually in the files, but it wasn't completely finished. But according to the changelog, it's actually going to come in as a pack for Germany, so it's not going to be a standard tech tree vehicle. This is kind of sad, because it would have been really nice to see it in the standard tech tree, but it's also not really a surprise seeing it as a pack. We haven't had that as a pack released, at least for a pre-order. Neither have we the FA18C for Switzerland pack, which also is kind of just sat there and nothing's gone on with it. There's also other variants of the C36 that maybe we can get in the tech tree, so at least there's that. Maybe we will see something with it. They also changed the name of the T72B3AM. It's now the B3A instead of the M, so I'm guessing they're going for the one with the standard system for the APS, but we're going to have to see what happens with that, since there was two of them. There was the more modern one, and then there was the standard one, which was in the files. Not entirely sure what they're doing with that. And also, they remembered about the T3485E, so that model has been updated. So did the T44-122 one, by the way. It now has the same hull model as the Battle Pass vehicle, the T44FM. So technically, it's going to be slightly worse armored. It's not going to make a huge difference, but at least it's something that's kind of interesting. The Hueys, the UH1B, C, D, and B, ended up getting detailed damage models added to them, and then also the AB205A1 has a detailed damage model too, which is kind of interesting. And they did end up adding more aircraft carriers to many other maps as well. So it wasn't just kind of the top tier ones, they also added them to some lower tier ones. So stuff like Central Tunisia and Denmark also got the carriers, and at the same time, they made it so each team would get 2 carriers and 2 ships escorting them. But for the smaller maps, where it wasn't really possible to have 2 carriers, there will only be 1. But basically, an aerialistic, if you have water on maps, you will now have carriers, and you will have destroyers. This is obviously setting up, so therefore stuff like anti-ship missiles are a little bit more useful, and also to give people a place where they can, reload and rearm and repair, which isn't the standard airfield. Because, we've all had to deal with airfield campers over the years. Not exactly incredibly fun when you're trying to kind of refuel, especially in the jet areas. European province as well. A few buildings that were previously missing from the minimap have been added, just to give people clarity, which I think generally is pretty good. They also completely forgot that the Leopard 2K uses the 20mm RH202, so now it's on the list of ones which is being changed. If you remember, the RH202, the 20mm, is getting a increased rounds per minute. So it used to be 800, now it's going to be 1030. So all vehicles that have that get a pretty good buff, which is quite nice. The Cage-29 as well. So this vehicle actually got a nerf. Basically, there was a limitation on allowed missile release of Mach 1.5, which was erroneously missing. That's now been added. They did also add a limitation for the missile at Mach 1, but that has now been removed. So it looks like it got there for a second and then it disappeared again. So you'll be able to launch it as long as you're under Mach 1.5, which, most of the time I feel like those types of vehicles who are carrying that will be anyway. The Tiger UHT, the helicopter, they actually changed its targeting optics, gave it a big buff. So before, it was 3.7 to 92.1 because helicopters have insane optics. Now it's going to be 9.2 to 131 times. So you'll be able to really zoom in on the player's souls as you basically use the PARs to fire and forget them to death, which is going to be pretty crazy. They're also changing how the mechanics for fire spreading for naval works, and I think it's just best to kind of read it out to you because there's a lot of wording here, and as we've talked about many times, naval as kind of like a game mode, it has constant changes to how its damage works, so this is what it is. The mechanics of spreading fire inside the barbettes has been updated. The fire in the barbette, the elevator fire, can still start because of a shell exploding inside it or spread from the main caliber turret being on fire. Previously, the fire in the barbette originated in the center of the elevator and grew in size, spreading equally up and down, eventually resulting in the whole elevator being on fire. Now the fire can originate from any point of the elevator. So if the fire spread from the turret to the elevator, it will spread from the very top of the elevator to the very bottom of it, giving the player more time to react. However, if the shell hit the bottom of the elevator, the fire will start there, giving the player little to no time to react. The ammo wetting modification still works. It reduces the chance of detonation when the magazines receive fire damage. The probability of detonation is checked constantly while the fire affects the module. This fire spreading mechanic works only for the big crude elevators of main caliber turrets. Other elevators that lack rooms and personnel cannot be set on fire and don't conduct the fire through themselves. So basically they're just making it a bit more realistic, which has been their push for a long time when it comes to this type of thing. They've also, when it comes to fires and naval, the indication of fires on the player's ships has been added to the damage panel in the bottom left. So the fire icon appears where the fire started, just like the hit camera, which I think is actually really cool that they ended up doing that. There's also some other stuff, such as they added new camouflages that can be purchased with GE for coastal vehicles for all nations, just kind of like how they did it for Blue Water, where there's like 3 separate camos that you can get now. Now for coastal, there'll be even more camos that will be available, which I think is pretty awesome. They also changed a bunch of sounds around different things, so such as like the AMX 50 series now have received the same sounds, as they obviously use the same engines. The Tiger 2s have their own engine sound nowadays. The SBAA missiles with IR Seekers have received their own indicative sounds for search and track modes, which is kind of interesting. And then also the range in which the bullet or shell produces a fly-by sound now depends on the caliber of the projectile. This is something that will be really nice because it basically means you won't hear ridiculous stuff from the other side of the map. The Striker, Scimitar, and Fox all receive their own characteristic engine sound, which is really cool, and the Type 10 series tanks also receive their own engine sound instead of using the Type 90 one, which, once again, is pretty awesome. Sound changes like that are really nice as long as the audio itself is balanced in terms of sound compared to everything else. We don't need another Type 74 situation where it's just really loud compared to everything else. There was also a bug in the hit analysis menu that caused the positions of the gun and turret not to change when replaying a hit if the tank had a smoke grenade modification installed. So that's been fixed. And there was also another bug in the hit analysis menu that caused the shape charge on fragments of heat shells and AT gems, as well as fragments of APHE, to not deal damage, which has also been fixed. And another bug in the hit analysis menu that could cause the majority of hits to not play has been fixed. It's amazing to me how that kind of system, the hit analysis system, has just never worked in the game. Since it's been added, just never been interested in working. I don't know how that works, I don't know how that happens, but it's incredibly annoying. So those were the changes that were made to the dev server right at the end, basically just before it closed. We're still waiting on a few things that usually get added to it, such as all the camouflages for the new vehicles, but usually that is kind of like a telltale sign that the update is pretty soon. So I hope you all have a wonderful day and also a wonderful week. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Warthunder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.